you also have put out information about John Dowd, who many will remember as the president's lawyer in the Mueller probe, who had represented Mr. Parnas. What is the thrust of that? Is there an allegation of some untoward lawyering on behalf of the president there?
Well, we put that out in a document that we filed earlier in the week, or last week even, because we had a hearing yesterday on whether we'd waive the attorney-client privilege inappropriately as to other defendants by turning over materials that were under subpoena in Congress. And we didn't do anything inappropriately. We tried to get all of that material to Congress. But in our submission, we had an email which was dated October 8th, the day before Lev Parnas was arrested, in which one of the president's lawyers, John Dowd, who came on in, I think, to circle the wagons and put a lid on Lev, essentially was apprising Jay Sekulow and Jane Raskin, who were, of course, part of the president's impeachment team, along with Mr. Giuliani and I think his then lawyer, John Sale, explaining to all of those people that Lev and Igor Fruman would certainly not be responding to the congressional subpoenas that they had received.
You think he was being a back channel and potentially compromising?
Well, that's a back channel.
Mr. Parnas?
That's a back channel when you're sending a communication about your client to 5, 6, 7, 8 different people and letting them know that he would be towing the president's line.
Let me do this because Mr. Parnas is listening in by phone. I'm going to ask you one question about Mike Pence, and I think Chuck Rosenberg then has a question here. Vice President Pence is also a potential person in this whole scheme. Your letter, Lev, says you could testify about it. I should note during the Senate trial, Chairman Schiff was suggesting that there was this extra material from a Pence aide and that it perhaps didn't match and thus could contradict one of Donald Trump's defense. We should remind everyone we don't know by definition what was in that supplemental material. Can you shed any light on that and the role of Pence, and what would your sources be for that?
First of all, I think it also coincides with what came out today in one of the excerpts of Bolton's book. I could definitely validate, and because right after that meeting that Bolton had with Rudy Mulvaney, Pat Ciccone, and the president, I met with Rudy right afterwards, and I discussed the whole meeting, and I was aware of it because we were going to, that was the trip it made that we were going to Ukraine. And it was interesting for me to find out today that Bolton never made the phone call, because I was always under the impression that Bolton did make the phone call, because I was told by Rudy that Bolton would make the call, and that's why everything would be fine and they would greet us.
Lev, let's slow down on that, because this is about the new account in the New York Times that is sourced allegedly to Mr. Bolton's forthcoming book. You're saying that Giuliani was under the impression that Bolton was at that time helping to engineer this Ukraine plot, and that, in fact, according to Bolton, which may be self-serving, he was already opting out, but Giuliani thought he was in on it with them?
No, Bolton was always against it. He was butting heads with Giuliani going back to even Venezuela stuff. So Bolton was against doing it, but because the president told him to do it, we were under assumption that he was going to follow the orders and do it.
You thought he would follow through, and you don't know whether he did or not. I mean, your information is coming from Bolton as well. You didn't know at the time whether he was or not, it sounds like.
Correct.
Okay.
That's not. Well, now it makes sense why they acted the way they acted, because they were being told not to meet with Giuliani. Bolton never made the phone call, and they were very skeptical.
Right, and then they pressed on to the other channels. Stay with me, Lev. Chuck Rosenberg.
Yeah, I had a question for Mr. Bondi, if I may. Really, maybe two questions, Joe, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Are you still trying to cooperate with the Southern District of New York? The reason they may not want to do that is the information may not be valuable or credible or thorough and complete. So is that still something you're trying to do? And then a second question after that one.
I would say our door is open, right? And perhaps now we've reversed things a little bit. Our door is open. On Monday, we'll be in court again, selecting a trial date, a motion schedule, a trial date. But our door is always open.
I think Chuck's implying that it doesn't seem like they're currently interested in your cooperation.
Oh, I understand that. But I can't imagine why they wouldn't want to have heard from Lev. There must be a very, very good reason.
Well, again, typically it's that they don't find it credible, valuable, or it's not about everything. That issue came up with Mr. Cohn, Michael Cohn, where it seemed like he didn't want to talk about certain things.
Well, I understand, but that was also late, and he got stuck into this Rule 35 posture. Let us know Michael Cohen. And what he's been saying since before any of this evidence was released has been corroborated by the facts beyond change. The evidence that he had was clearly valuable to the impeachment inquiry. Maybe the Southern District is launching now or moving into high gear with their investigation or even the bringing of charges against people like Mr. Giuliani. Maybe they have a plan to reserve Lev.
But this goes to the heart of it. Is it fair to say that having not secured their interests in your private negotiations, you're now trying to make them more interested in public?
Not really. You know, what we tried to do is pretty simple. We're dealing with a very low, what we call sentencing guideline case. We were facing prosecutors that didn't want to hear what we had to say. We were up against a time crunch with something of incredible importance, the impeachment inquiry. That's not every day that there is an impeachment inquiry and then a trial. And we believe that if we could get our message to Congress, that Lev would be able to make the most profound impact.
We're over time, but I want to give Chuck one more
Quick
shot.
question. Your letter sets up a very seldom used defense, a public authority defense. The notion that a defendant is relying on instructions from a senior official in the government and therefore can't be culpable criminally of his conduct. Seldom used, seldom successful. Tell me about that.
Seldom used because the facts often don't support that.
Correct.
Right? But here, this is a defense right out of what you'd call the USAM or the Justice Manual. And the defense has been...
Right out of the Federal Rules of Criminal Procedure.
Absolutely. And if you look at the statements of Mr. Giuliani, that he is working as the president's attorney in furtherance of the president, and his statements that Mr. Parnas is indeed working in furtherance of his objectives, Mr. Giuliani's objectives, I think we have that defense.
I've got to fit in the break. It's been really fascinating, particularly all of this with the expertise at the table. And Mr. Parnas joining us by phone on a big night when the Senate has moved away from witnesses. You were one of the ones that some senators wanted, so I appreciate you jumping on the line with us, sir.
Thank you, Ari. And before we go, I just want to make one little quick note. I can't wait till more of the book comes out about what Bolton spoke to Barr about, because Barr knew exactly what Giuliani and we were doing there. So I thank you for having me on your show.
And you think there's more to come that will prove that about Bill Barr?
Absolutely. I think there's a treasure trove. Just think about this. There is no such thing as a coincidence. Me and Bolton don't speak. We haven't. There was no interaction. And here you go. All of a sudden, I made the claim that Barr knew because I know he knew. And then Bolton makes the claim that he spoke to him. And Barr calls both of us liars with the statement. So I think the truth will come out. And I think more experts will come out in his book.
It's very interesting. It's very interesting what you say. And as we emphasize, your legal situation, you're a fact witness. But Mr. Bolton, of course, also a fact witness and had contact with a lot of these people. We're going to keep our eye on all of it. Lev Parnas, our thanks to you. Joseph Bondi here in New York. Thank you.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.